I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This time out, a special guest is joining us. We have Bryan Hitt from REO Speedwagon here. Good to see you, man. Oh, I didn't want to interrupt your flex there. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Thanks for taking time to come over. You guys are doing a show tonight.
Yes, we are.
Over at the Follinger Theater, which is a great venue.
Yeah, I hear that. It's like a small amphitheater outdoors.
Yeah, somewhere around 3,000 people, something like that.
Nice.
So it's a very comfortable.
A nice size. That's my favorite size venue, actually. And
nice.
You get these big arenas or the sheds, as we call them. The outdoor amphitheaters, and you kind of. There's a distance there that, it's kind of, especially me being the drummer and towards the back, it's hard to sometimes, feel the audience, and I like to feel it,
Right.
So.
Right.
Anyway.
So I read that you were first interested in getting into music and drums from the Mouseketeers when you were in Texas. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, Cubby, the drummer, on the Mouseketeers was one of my first influences, let's put it that way. Yeah, I thought he looked so cool banging the drums, and he actually was a pretty good drummer even back in the day when he was just a young kid.
Right.
So yeah, that was one of my early introductions. It's like, wow, you could do that. It's like,
get you started, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you moved on from that auspicious start to you played in a soul band in high school, right?
I did, with my two older brothers. They had been, established in the area, just playing weekend stuff. We were all still in high school. And, but yeah, it's called the Solid Souls.
Right.
We covered like James Brown, Wilson Pickett, Sam and Dave, Otis Redding, really cool stuff, which was really groove-oriented, drums. I think, that definitely influenced my feel even later as I went more in the rock direction. Something about having that background in soul music.
That's part of that foundation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it's more of a bottom-up approach than a top-down approach.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that everything stems from the kick drum.
Okay.
And that's where the groove is, and then the stuff up here doesn't have to be so busy if that is really solid. And a lot of guys, especially modern guys, they're playing a bunch of stuff up here, but they don't have that foundation down there. So that's what I know. I've heard that phrase too used in several different ways, but it's bottom up instead of top down.
Right. So you feel that's really where your groove comes from, is your foot?
I think so, yeah. Yeah. Even, when I took over the drum chair for REO, Alan was a great guy, great drummer, did a lot of great parts, but stylistically, in those days, the bass drum was a lot busier, and it wasn't so prominent in the mix either. So you could do a lot more stuff. It's like, like an Alan or like a Danny Serafini or some of those. The bass drum is kind of all over the place in those old tunes. Yeah. And I kind of did my own take on it. And actually, when I auditioned for REO, and they had a cattle call audition, but I was the first guy to play. They flew in guys from San Francisco, New York, and all the LA guys, and I got the gig. And Kevin, let me know pretty much right away. Although they still had to audition like 100 more drummers because they, it's like just, He said, yeah. I said, he knew I was the guy because. We played Roll with the Changes, and he said that was the best. The first time I ever played it was the best that it had ever felt. So that was.
How prepared did you go into the audition?
I was very prepared. It's funny, I wasn't a huge fan of REO. I wasn't familiar with their music other than like the ballad, the hits. Somehow that escaped me. I think I was kind of in a jazz period at that time, being in Alaska and stuff. I was doing a lot of jazz actually and stuff. So I just wasn't that familiar with the music. So I wanted to go in prepared, and I did prepare a lot for the thing, but it wasn't like, this is going to make or break me. I was pretty busy in LA at the time doing sessions and playing with 3 or 4 bands at the same time. A lot of irons in the fire.
Right.
So.
As musicians do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we do.
But as we played a couple of gigs, and you know, at first it still was just kind of like, yeah, this is okay, you know. But then we played Veterans Arena in Phoenix, and it was full. I mean, 15,000 people. I think it might have been a free show because REO wasn't selling that kind of tickets at that time. But we hit one of the big ballads, I think, "Keep on Loving You," and the lighters, you know, came out in the audience, and it was like, I'm looking around at 15,000 people just like going crazy, and it was like, yeah, you know, I think I can hang with this. This is going to work. You know?
Yeah, right. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's fun. So you mentioned Alaska. You had migrated there from Texas.
Yes.
And you said you were playing jazz there?
I did later on. At first, I kind of, you know, I finished high school there my last 2 years, and kind of quit playing drums for a couple of years. I had such a great band director and music program in school in East Texas, where I grew up, in a little town called Joaquin with a J. And then I moved up there, and I just didn't really get the band director or the band. It was kind of square. It was your typical band, where our little band in Texas was cool. I mean, we played some different stuff and did different stuff, and so I kind of got disheartened a little bit and just kind of lost my way on the drums. And not until I graduated and then started jamming around with friends and that I got back into it. And I was a mailman right after high school, and I remember the more I started playing, the less, you know, you had to get up at 4:30 and clock in at 5:30 being a mailman, and it was like, bars in Alaska stay open till 5 a.m., you know, especially on the weekends, so it was hard to get up. So
yeah, that's rough.
I remember I quit the post office gig and to play music, and yeah, right. My mom told me I was ruining my life.
It's worked out okay though.
Yeah, it did. It worked out.
So you moved to LA, and you worked with a lot of different artists there.
Yeah.
How did you kind of get yourself into the scene? How did you develop your career?
Man, you know, it was all word of mouth pretty much. You know, I was playing, gigging, you know, my ex-girlfriend, who all of a sudden became my new girlfriend again because I moved to LA, she was really the only person I knew there. And we got a little top 40 band together, and we were playing, and just really on a very low level. And then we started getting better, the band got better, and then a couple of years I got in another band that really kind of rose to the top of the LA club scene at that time, you know, the cover scene. And then just met a few folks, and then started another band with some really great players. Tom Crucier, who was Crucier's brother from Rat, and a friend of mine who had relocated from Anchorage, Stuart Mathis, who's gone on to play with Jewel, and Jacob Dylan's band.
Wallflowers?
Wallflowers now, he plays with them. He also plays with Lucinda Williams. So you know, this band was really good. I mean, with really good players. Jeff Nato went on to play with Quiet Riot and the keyboard player, and so everyone in the band, you know, was good enough to make it. And in order to keep that caliber of musicians together, we knew we had to work and make money. And so we did the top 40 thing also, and we really did rise to the top of the LA scene. We were making really good money in LA, playing clubs, playing cover music, but we were also an original band. We worked on the side on tunes. And we started showcasing and got a deal on Manhattan Records, which was Bruce Lundvall's label, a subsidiary of Capitol, and went into Capitol Studios and recorded a record. And you know, everything was going to, you know, looked like it was going to go really good. Our singer felt like we shouldn't be playing top 40 anymore because we had a record deal. So then we proceeded to starve, and the record went plywood. And yeah, after about a year of that, I was like, I got to make some money, guys. So I quit the band, and I actually started working for the Drum Doctor, who is a cartage and setup service for some of the most famous drummers in LA. Jeff Porcaro. I set up Vinnie Colaiuta, Jim Keltner, And I was in the studio with Jeff one day setting him up, and Peter Wolf, producer, keyboard player from Zappa, and he produced the Wang Chung records, and he produced Lionel Richie, a whole bunch of stuff. Really, really good musician. And I met Peter in the studio, and Jeff must have given him my number or something, because a few days later he called me up and asked me if I wanted to do like Solid Gold and American Bandstand with Wang Chung. They didn't know, you know, they knew I'd probably played drums a little bit, but they didn't know that I was really a drummer. But I had cool hair, so that was more important at that time. So we did a couple of those shows, and I remember, you know, I mean, I really learned the parts, and you know, you're playing on the dead drums and the double cymbals that don't make any noise, except, I mean, just kind of make that kind of noise.
Right, just thud.
And they could tell that I was really nailing it, though, because they could hear it enough, and all three heads turned around, and it's like, oh, I think we found ourselves a drummer. So then, yeah, I got the gig with Wang Chung, which was really my first big break. And
right. How long were you with them?
About 2.5 years off and on, and then I did a record with them, and I played on a few tunes. And they had Vinnie Colaiuta to play on a good portion of the record, but it was fun. We ended up touring with Tina Turner for about 6 months. You know, but we had a hit. I mean, with "Everybody Have Fun Tonight," and
right.
So we were playing big venues, and you know, I got all the endorsements and all the neat stuff that comes with the success. Right. You know, so it was great.
Yeah. Right. Around that, or in that same period, you played in a band with Dave Amato.
Well, we kind of crossed paths a few times, actually. Okay. I think at a Cher audition was where I first met Dave. And he got the gig, I didn't. Right. It was one of those things where I really didn't prepare that well. I wasn't I was that keen on doing it anyway. And then I think we met somewhere else briefly. I can't recall. Yeah, so when he had just gotten the gig with REO, and so he suggested me, and also Kevin Cronin's girlfriend at the time, and later his long-term wife, was working at Geffen Records, and she saw me playing with this really whacked out new wave kind of band, and it was like I had this hybrid drum kit of electronic pads, maybe a bass drum, you know, pots and pans and just weird stuff, you know, that I was banging on. But she saw something there, and she told me, my boyfriend's band's looking for a new drummer. You know, would you be interested? And so
that was where the audition came from?
From both Dave and her. So I was suggested by, you know, two people, so I think that kind of helped a little too.
I read that you went in with a special snare drum when you did the audition.
I did. Boy, you're pretty good. Yeah, I had kind of, after working with the drum doctor, and he had some really cool vintage drums and that he would rent out. And, you know, some of these drums have been on the most famous records in the world, like, you know, Nevermind by, you know. Right. And anyway, so I kind of caught the collecting bug, and I was playing with Spencer Davis Group at this time, and we were playing down in South Florida, and it was a club and a music store called Musicians Exchange. It was really cool because it was a nice club upstairs. They had, you know, national acts like Spencer Davis Group, and you know, kind of on the B level at that time, but still, you know, neat stuff. And downstairs there was a music store. And I walked down there, and you know, and of course they've got all the shiny new drums, and then there's one drum sitting up there. It looks like hell. I mean, it just looked like somebody vomited on it. No, it's just like, it was kind of greenish looking. You know, I mean, it was just ugly. But I looked inside it, and I was like, wow, that's a brass shell. You know, this is like a black beauty that somebody I thought just sprayed a bunch of crap on it. You know. Well, it turns out it was, I didn't know until later, and when I got back to LA, I took it around to a few of the older drum shops where they knew about vintage drums, and he actually had the magazines, and we looked it up. It was a 1925 Ludwig Stippel gold snare, which is very, very rare. Wow. And it sounded awesome. And then when I, at the store, still at the store, I saw that drum and I said, I want this drum, how much, Well, heck, we got the whole kit. It's like, so I ended up with the bass drums, typical, the Chinese tom-tom, and a couple of wood blocks and cymbals and a lowboy hi-hat, before the hi-hat, there was that little thing you played down there just with your foot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my first really kind of cool, really vintage, 1925 drums. And that snare just killed, it killed. So I brought that to the audition and played on it. And Kevin and the rest of the guys were impressed with that first. First of all, because Kevin has some really vintage guitars. He has a Nocaster, I think it's a 52. I'm not sure of the vintage.
Super early, yeah.
He still plays.
Right.
He brings that thing out. It's it's probably $150,000, $200,000 guitar. So he appreciated that, and also the sound. I mean, it was like. So then we go into rehearsals, and I have a Tama, endorsement, and so I bring my Tama drums down and my Tama snare, and it was just a good snare. But Kevin kind of looks around and said, wait a minute, we heard you and that snare drum. So I had to take my typical snare out on the road for the first couple of years and beat the hell out of it. But you know what? I buy this stuff to play at.
Sure.
So, I mean, I do have a few snare drums that I wouldn't, take out. They're just too fragile and too valuable maybe. But for the most part, I don't buy anything that I can't bang on. So.
Right, they're instruments.
Yeah. Right. But I have a lot of 20s, 30s Black Beauties and Leadies and a lot of Sling-Around Radio Kings and some pretty cool stuff. Nice. And my drum tech is John Aldridge, who founding author and of Not So Modern Drummer, and he's the world's foremost hand engraver of drums. He does all the Ludwig drums, DW, Tama. Pretty much if you see a hand engraved drum, pretty good chance John Aldridge did that drum. So
nice.
I have real pretty drums.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt.
He even engraves my rims mounts. It's like he's crazy.
Right. That's cool.
It's really cool.
That's cool. So I'm always curious when we have guitar players here or bass players here. The question is always: you come into an established band that's had a lot of hits. Do you have to play exactly like the record was? Do you have to play like the previous player did, or do you come in and just say, "This is my gig. I'm going to play it the way that I want to play it"?
Well, there's a certain amount of stuff you have to honor. I mean, obviously, like on the big ballads, some of the fills, it was the right part at the right time, and yeah, you need to honor that. But as far as most of the fills and just the like I was talking about with the busy bass drum, I kind of simplified all that and made it a little more, a little more rock oriented. So there is room to play, and believe me, but at this point, after 27 years, those drum parts are mine now. I own them, and so I, pretty much changed everything. And even early on, I kind of, they wanted my input on stuff, and they wanted my style. I came more from a background of playing with drum machines and a little better time, a little better sense of time, because all of a sudden in the early 80s when the drum machines came out, so many really good drummers had a rough time, and I would venture to say most of them were older drummers. They didn't really embrace the new technology, and if everybody in the world is listening to perfect time all the time, I mean, it quickly becomes apparent if the drummer's not playing in time. I mean, that's one of the things that just people really can hear. They may not hear pitch, they may not hear a lot of things, but they know if it's rock solid or not.
Right. Right.
Even Bruce Springsteen's drummer was talking about at one point. Bruce came to him and said, the time thing is, and I can't even think of his name right now.
Max Weinberg.
Max. And so Max, he you know, did something about it.
Mm-hmm.
He, you know, he embraced the drum machines and, you know, worked on his time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's great. You know, it's great. You know,
Right.
I mean, you can do it. It takes some work. It doesn't just happen.
So was that something that you had to work a lot at, or was it something
Well,
that
you
felt
know what?
natural for you?
Especially with the Wang Chung gig, it all of a sudden, you know, when I started, we were playing everything to a click,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't necessarily because of the drum parts, but it was all the fly-in keyboard parts. There's no way that one person could cover all that stuff, so we were flying in a lot of keyboards,
Mm-hmm.
and so everything was to a click. And the more time I spent there, and then we got a new keyboard player, my friend Jeff Nato from my Life by Night days.
Those connections, right?
Yes. I got him the gig, and then he could cover a little bit more. So we started, maybe only a third of the tunes were being played with a click track.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time also, I had this unit called it was like the human clock, as it was
Mm-hmm.
called.
Was that
And
the Dr. Click? Was that the one of the, well, anyway?
I think it
one of
was
those things
called-
that followed your.
Yeah, you know, you could either you know, put a trigger from your bass drum or your snare, and it would follow the tempo that way. So I could set the tempos, and then that way things could breathe a little bit, you know, a little bit more. It wasn't so stodgy, but yeah, after 3 years of playing with a click track all the time, it was pretty easy. You know,
You were locked
it
in.
became second nature. You know, and it's just a matter of doing it. That, you know, I mean, anyone can do it, but you got to, you know, just like anything else, you got to put the time in on it and do
Yeah,
it.
sure, sure.
So-
So for a young player who is looking forward to hopefully a long career, you had a lot of experience with working through different groups and different stages of your career before you landed the gig as a member of REO. What does a player like that do to prepare themselves to be ready for that career?
Well, you know, I mean, immerse yourself in as many styles as possible. Like I said, I started playing R&B as a kid. You know, I wasn't really that much into rock music early. I was like an anomaly. I mean, you know, I was listening to jazz, all the CTI stuff, and, you know, George Benson and this kind of stuff, and even play. You know, I did play my share of rock gigs early on, but also the R&B gigs, the jazz gigs. I even played in piano trios, you know, and piano, bass, drums, you know, playing standards, you know, jazz standards, you know. So
Right.
I play brushes. You know, it's not like I'm the greatest jazz guy in the world. If somebody wanted to hire me for a jazz gig now, I would say no.
Right,
No,
right.
you go get a real guy.
Sure.
But I could play enough of it to get by. And I think that it just gives you a better overall sensibility about music and feel and time and just a different, you know, you can, you know, people aren't going to put something in front of you and it's like, you know, throwing you a curveball. It's like, you know, you've got an idea of what they're doing, talking about, and you can make something work for it. So
Right. So that versatility is key to being ready for.
I think so. It's certainly the more you bring to the table, the better off you're going to be.
Right, right. So we often hear about the aspects that go on behind a touring band, again, relating to players who are looking to get into a career as a musician long term. What is it besides the playing that's important to a career?
Well, you have to be a good human being.
Yeah.
You have to know how to get along with people. You have to go with the flow a lot of times. And you have to know when to hold your ground and when to, you know, say, okay, I'll deal with this, you know.
Right.
Yeah, especially in a band that, you know, we travel together, we're together, you know. It's like a family. It really is a family. And REO especially is. I mean, I think the newest crew guy we have has been in the crew for 9 years or something.
Wow.
You know, so yeah, it's so you know, it really helps to just be able to get along with people and not just don't be a It's pretty simple.
Pretty easy, right?
Yeah. But some guys can't do it.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, sure. So you guys are on the road pretty much through the end of the year and beyond, right?
Yes, we are. We've got stuff booked already in January. A rock and roll cruise in January, and December we're going to the UK and doing about 13 or 15 shows with a band who couldn't get arrested in the States, but is huge in England. Status Quo.
Sure.
And they do a winter tour, and we'll be playing huge arenas over there with those guys, like O2 Arena in London. We're playing Manchester, Liverpool, and they're all big arena shows. So we're looking
awesome.
forward to that. And
Yeah.
and we the rest of the summer we'll be playing with Tesla opening and Def Leppard playing large venues. So,
That's a great bill.
yeah,
That's
it
great.
really is. It's been fun. We just did 7 shows together, and now we're on a little break from that. So we're playing some of our shows,
Right.
and then we'll get back to with them in about 2 weeks, and pretty much the rest of the summer is gone.
That's a hard touring. You looked like you had a little bit of a break in November. It was about the only break you guys have.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, that's a great year.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be good. And,
Absolutely.
yeah.
We'll look forward to it.
Well, great.
Bryan, it's so nice to meet you. Thanks
Nice
for
to
taking
meet
time.
you,
I know you have a
Mitch.
sound check that you're heading over to
Yes,
for the,
we
the
are.
show tonight.
We
but-
don't get many sound checks with the Def Leppard thing being the middle band.
Right.
It's like if you're on either end, the opener or the closer, you can get a little bit of time on stage.
But after 27 years, you kind of know what you're doing, right?
Well, we do. It's just find things like, how do we walk out on stage? And
course.
believe me, that's been our biggest dilemma.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's like the playing part, no problem. It's just like, okay, how are we going to enter and
Right.
get,
If you can get me
started?
on the stage, I'll be fine.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
funny.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. And sometimes the pod doesn't open, and no, we won't even go there.
I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.